As members of the Southeast Cadre, we were challenged to find age-appropriate transition assessments that could give us quality and useful information about our students. Many of our students were not engaged in the paper and pencil assessments. Our students were doing lots of hands-on activities related to their post-secondary goals, but we were not capturing that information. We were struggling to build upon information from previous year's activities and assessment results, and our transition assessment summaries were not the quality we wanted due to the inferior outcomes of transition assessment tools. Therefore, in 2014, we sponsored a webinar on authentic assessments with Dr. Joni Schmalzried. After a year of implementation, the Southeast Cadre would like to follow up with you by sharing what we have learned and our tips for implementing authentic assessments with secondary students. During this tutorial, you will be provided a definition of authentic assessment, tips for collecting meaningful information, identifying authentic assessment opportunities, guiding questions to develop your own authentic assessment tools, and example authentic assessment tools which you may use or build upon for your unique activities. Let's begin with first learning what is an authentic assessment. The definition of what authentic assessment is. An authentic assessment occurs within context of a real-life experience. The teacher provides instruction, connects students with learning opportunities, and facilitates the student's reflection of the experience. This reflection allows a student to have a deeper understanding of the experience and utilize higher-order thinking skills. Authentic assessment is often defined by what it is not. It is not a standardized test with multiple choice questions. It is not vague pictures open for interpretation. It is not true-false questions or fill-in-the-blank tests. This leads us to tip number 1. Tip number 1, authentic assessments help you gather meaningful information. As secondary teachers, you are required to assess students each year for their strengths, interests, preference, and needs in the post-secondary goals of employment, education training, and if applicable, independent living. When students are beginning the transition process, paper and pencil assessments may assist in introducing the future to students and making connections to careers based on their interests and hopes and dreams. However, as students get older and their interests become more refined, many teachers struggle to get quality information about the student through paper and pencil assessments. Teenagers often complain that it is a boring or I have already done this, or in rare situations, students have refused to complete the assessment. So we questioned, how can we find out more about who your students are, their unique characteristics, and goals for the future? We have found that authentic assessments may also stimulate student engagement and motivation more than a paper and pencil assessment. They also generate more meaningful and quality information from the student because they are based upon their own unique experiences or learning opportunity. Examples could be the feedback from a supervisor on a job or work site, a reflection from a college visit, or skills learned in an elective course. By building upon the student's unique experiences and transition services and activities, we found tip number 2. Tip number 2. Moving from transition assessment summary to transition service and activities to transition assessment summary is a continuous process if a teacher capitalizes on the authentic assessment opportunities. As the graphic shows on the left, by capitalizing on authentic assessment information, there is a greater continuity within the transition IEP and from year to year. The first step is the transition assessment summary will identify the student's strengths, interests, preference, and needs for post-secondary employment, education, training, and, if applicable, independent living. Then, the case conference committee then agrees upon the transition service and activities, which the school will provide to assist the student to refine and/or work towards the post-secondary goals. As a result, the transition services and activities are authentic assessment opportunities, which should be reflected upon with the student. And finally, the data collected in the reflection of the transition service and activity is documented and summarized for an age-appropriate transition assessment on the next transition IEP. Does this make sense? Let me give you an example to demonstrate how continuous process works. This is a multi-year example of the continuous process from summary of age-appropriate transition assessment to transition services and activities to the next year's IEP summary of age-appropriate transition assessment to transition services and activities as shown on the graphic on the left. First, Natalia completes a career interest inventory and identifies she wants to work with animals. Natalia states she cares for her own pets each day. Her parents confirm that she is very responsible and has earned money dog walking and pet sitting for neighbors. During the conference, the transition coordinator identifies a work experience at a local veterinarian's office to exercise, feed, and groom animals in their kennels. This work experience is listed as a transition service and activity to occur 4 times per week during the effective dates of the IEP. Throughout the effective dates of the IEP, the teacher of record collects a weekly evaluation from the job coach for information on Natalia's strengths, interests, preferences for her self-management skills, communication skills, work environment, job-specific skills, and support needs. The veterinarian completes a similar evaluation monthly. After watching a webinar with her teacher, Natalia creates a PowerPoint presentation for her experience to share at her next case conference. Prior to the next case conference, the teacher of record summarizes the evaluations and Natalia's PowerPoint, which includes her strengths, interests, preference, and needs in the summary of the age-appropriate transition assessments in the IEP. And finally, based on Natalia's experiences, Natalia enrolls in the Health Sciences vocational class for the next school year, which is a transition service and activity in her IEP. From this example, we hope that you can see how a continuous process of assessment activity creates quality programming and services for a student in addition to creating a quality transition IEP. It is important to note tip number 3. Tip number 3, authentic assessment does not mean subjective assessment. Authentic assessment data includes the quantitative data collection that is occurring in elective classes, on work sites, and during community-based instruction. It is important for secondary teachers to ensure the authentic assessment tool they are using collects enough information for the teachers to write a transition assessment summary, which would include the student's strengths, interests, preferences, and needs for post-secondary employment, education and training, and, if applicable, independent living. You may be thinking to yourself, this sounds great, but what is an authentic assessment opportunity? This brings us to tip number 4. Tip number 4, they are everywhere. Here are just a few examples of school-based, community, and extracurricular activities which Southeast Cadre members have used to collect authentic assessment data. Take a moment and pause this video to read this list of opportunities. Once you have completed reading the list, please press play to continue to the next slide. Thinking about